Hey, this is deadline week, and so I'm just going to go straight into Q&A. I don't have an opening statement or anything like that. Just look forward to any questions y'all have.
Lauren Ashley's law is getting a lot of pushback from the House because it wasn't heard in your body. Can you tell us more about why it wasn't heard today?
You know, I delegate the authority to the floor leaders, and I think Senator McCourtney has put out a statement to that end about the policy side of it. Wasn't involved in that decision.
Was there certain bills from you guys' side that weren't heard on the House that you maybe wish were?
Oh, there's going to be a ton of bills that didn't get heard on the House side. It's just part of the process right now. There's a lot of drama around this time of year when it's deadline and a lot of hard feelings, but to point to a specific one, I don't know if it'd be helpful.
You had, I think the House was saying there were certain senators who weren't going to get their bills heard. You had a meeting or some conversation with Speaker McCall. I've heard that maybe got ironed out a little bit. Can you give us some details about what that?
It didn't really get ironed out. I just changed my mind. Yesterday, I became aware that the speaker had gone back on his word to me to not tie anything to that car tag bill. So politics get in the way of things out here a lot of times, and we'll juxtapose different competing policy interests and hold one hostage from time to time. But I was given assurance by the speaker and others in the House that no way, shape, or form would they tie anything to that car tag bill. And I found out yesterday that they had done just that the day before and demanded that of my floor leader, unbeknownst to me, that in order to hear the car tag bill, we had to put the speaker's 1105 on our agenda. I justifiably got upset about that and shared my opinion with the Speaker Pro Tem, and the floor leader of the House, and pulled that bill from yesterday's agenda, 1105, and then directed the floor leader to not hear a couple bills. But I don't want to play their game, and so I woke up this morning thinking, hey, that's not who I am, and called the Senate authors and said, hey, your bills will be greenlit. I'm not going to put a hold on them. We'll let them go the way they want to. I'm upset with the way the speaker played politics with something that he knows is that near and dear to me and important, but I'm not going to stoop to that level.
What is 1105? What is that bill?
Initiative petition reform. It's a Julie Daniels, Charles McCall bill, and it's on the floor today. I don't think it's been up yet. I've been on and off the floor, but I think it's still yet to come.
Talk to us about the veto override yesterday. You guys did a veto override. We're hearing that the House isn't going to do it, that they've cut a deal with the governor.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing, and you know, the House has been pretty clear with lobbyists that they've cut a deal. They've been a little bit more mixed in their communication to us on it. But I really think Charles, excuse me, I don't mean to be disrespectful in that way. I think the Speaker of the House has turned his chamber over to the governor to allow him to run that place right now.
And what is your other, beyond the veto, other?
That's the legislative prerogative. If we pass something, for instance, that bill that we overrode yesterday, I have no grand illusion that they're going to override it. I think what they'll do is shove the language into the bill we had already agreed to run trailer to let the governor save some face. But it will be John Eccles, myself, and district attorneys had an agreement that if we ran a trailer bill to fix and make sure that the crime was directly related to the domestic violence and a couple other small things, that they would stand down. Didn't say they would support it, but said they would stand down and not oppose it. So I was surprised yesterday when I saw the District Attorneys Association, which is not to be confused with the District Attorneys Council, creative way to hide from open records, I guess. But the District Attorneys Association came out and applauded the governor. But we'd been working with the District Attorneys Council, and to be honest with you, I've been around for a long time, but I didn't realize the differentiation really fully until yesterday.
I
go to their meetings, and it's quite bizarre. They have the first one, then they have lunch, and then we all must leave. And
Okay.
it's very,
You could educate me on it because I didn't know about it until last
I will
night.
tell you this, the council, they were quite mad about the bill anyway, so I don't know.
They were, but they had worked with us, in particular, a specific district attorney assigned by the district attorney's council had worked with Eccles to work through the issues. We had agreed to take a Todd Gallagher bill and put the language in it. I think it was 8315 or 3815. I don't know. It had those numbers in it. We had already worked out an agreement. But the governor, it's interesting because the governor and nor Secretary Everest nor anyone on the governor's team reached out and asked about that. My lowest ranking members, the newest members, received text from the governor or the governor's team on like raising a fee for $5 for cosmetology. I'm just making the hypothetical up. But the leader of the Senate and the floor leader of the House were not consulted by the governor on, hey, is there any backstory to this? Is there any knowledge? He just vetoed it. So.
Senate Bill 473 on the House agenda today. It was dealing with, I believe, teacher retirement. It has now been shot to do a mandatory retirement at 75 for all Oklahoma judges. Is that something you guys are in favor of? Did you know that was being amended? Well, it's a passed bill.
Yeah, I heard that they were going to advance it title off today. I'm not in favor of that, but I don't know how the majority of our members feel. I was in favor very much in J&C reform, think it's overdue. But to put an arbitrary age limit on that to try to get a few justices off is not my preferred path.
I want to go back to Lauren Ashley's law because we have on camera Steve Bayshore, Representative Bayshore, saying that the Senate prioritizes criminals over victims. I know there was a statement from Senator McCourtney, but he did say this on camera. I just want to give you a chance to address that.
I'll let Senator McCourtney address it. It's just politics.
Onto a less controversial subject, the state superintendent. He sent out a letter to Oklahoma school districts yesterday, basically encouraging them to violate the new federal Title IX guidelines, which could ultimately result, of course, in all kinds of legal entanglements. Kind of what's your stance on that?
I have not seen it. I saw headlines about it, so I've not seen the letter and how strongly worded. Obviously, if there's federal law, rules, and regulations in order to receive certain monies and treatment, we need to make sure we're very careful in how we deal with that. But I'm not well versed enough on that particular letter, that particular issue to give specific comment on it.
He also said that his people have been dealing with House leaders, Senate leaders on the education budget, and that you were all real close, but of course didn't provide any details. So, I mean, is that close to being true?
I don't know because I have really tried to delegate the budget stuff. I obviously stay well versed on it. I go over numbers every day. I talk to subcommittees. I talk to but as far as can I speak to that he's been involved in those conversations? I don't know. Can I speak to if we're close? I think we're still pretty far apart on the education side of things. And the teacher pay side of things on the 16.1 or 16.67, depending on who you ask, we're still worlds apart on that because the House is still advocating that it's a one-time only payment and going a 180 off what they had last year. Remember last year they were trying to do the Oklahoma Student Fund that we rejected. But in return for rejecting that, they said, can we get the off the formula teachers paid on this pay raise in perpetuity? And we agreed to that. And now they're backing off of that and saying they'll fix it for 1 year and 1 year only. That's still a major sticking point.
The audit that came out this week that ripped the Office of Management Enterprise Services and Tourism, does that concern the leader of the Senate? And if so, what action can you do, or what are your plans?
Yeah, we've been very concerned about that. Loft had come out with a previous report on that, and then Loft also had done some of the digging on what ended up being the Swadley story a year or two ago. And it all deals with central purchasing at the core of its problem. the CARES Act funds came out in a very unique time in our nation's history, and so Congress really didn't give legislatures a lot of say in it. The governors around the country had a lot of control over it. We witnessed, in a very difficult circumstance, to give the governor due credit. I mean, very difficult circumstances during the height of COVID there. But we saw some really shaky standards being put into place with not any oversight and preferential treatment of certain vendors. And so it caused both the speaker, who actually kind of led the charge, and myself to make sure that when the ARPA came out that we took that, we had to run a bill to take that away from the governor and OMES and put it in the legislative branch for us to do the budgeting on it. And I think from almost all accounts, Republicans and Democrats out here, is one of the best processes we've had, an open, transparent process. But that audit, I haven't read the entirety of it yet. I did read the Loft report, and I've read parts of Auditor Byrd's audit, and it causes me grave concern. We've done some bills out here trying to deal with central purchasing. There's been some bills floating around to exempt people from central purchasing, which causes me great pause during this time.
If I could ask you a couple questions just back about the veto you already mentioned. There were some other vetoes. I don't know that I have the math right. It might be 14 Senate bills to 4 House bills, somewhere in there. I think you told some of my colleagues yesterday that you felt like maybe the Senate or Senate leaders are being targeted. Can you kind of re-describe what you were sensing and feeling?
Yeah, I don't know the exact numbers, but you're not too far off. It was 12 to 3 or 4 yesterday, and I think there's been a couple more. So I think there seems to be a pattern emerging. And my grandmother used to have a phrase that said, even hypochondriacs get sick every once in a while. And so I may just be paranoid, but I believe where there's paranoia, sometimes there's a real reason for it. The governor last year vetoed arbitrarily about 20 of our bills, and it caused us to pull into rules and deny a couple of his executive noms. It seems like he may be heading down that same wrong-headed path, but we'll watch and see and make sure he's doing it on the merits of his disagreement on policy and not just trying to target myself or the Senate writ large. Seems like he's also targeting A.G. Drummond in a lot of his vetoes, and so I just want to serve notice that we're watching.
Well, can you kind of explain or expound a little bit more on why you think he is going down that road? Is it over income tax, or what is the reason?
Does he just not like you?
No, I really think that's it. I think it's
Really?
a personal hatred of me.
Are you that hard to get along with?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm hard-nosed and I'm a tough negotiator, but we share philosophically about 95% of what we believe in. I think the governor and I are more philosophically aligned than the speaker and I are. And that's no offense to the speaker. It's just, I think it's true. It all kind of devolved last April or May. He had been siding with the House the entirety of the time on the school choice debate, even though I've been a proponent of school choice before I even ran for office. But he wanted me to come to a deal with Charles real early, and we weren't going to give in on giving some students in Oklahoma preferential treatment based on their zip code and really leave the kids in bigger cities behind and treat them less than equal. And when I say bigger city, I don't just mean Oklahoma City and Tulsa. I'm talking Ponca City, Enid, Lawton, McAllister, Fort Gibson even was on that list. I mean, when I say city, people just automatically think Deb Gist and is it a fight over Tulsa and all that. No, it was a fight for kids to make sure they were treated equally. So we got in a fight over that. And then during budget negotiations last year, which were still in the dark of night, and that's the reason I'm so proud that we're pulling them out in the open, we were down in the governor's small conference room, and he was going over every item of the budget and nitpicking on it. And I loved it because he was nitpicking Kevin Wallace's pet projects. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to get those out too. But then it came to the speaker had done a 5-year extension on the compacts without my approval, put my name on something. And I said I was only willing to give a 1-year extension on the compacts because I wanted to give both the governor and the tribes a probationary 1-year period to see if we could get it. And for some reason, that really stuck in his craw, and I don't know what it was. He got really upset at me, and I could never understand it. Why, if the speaker was going 5 years, which by the way would have been the year after he left office is when that would have expired, and I moved it to 1 year, for some reason all the anger came to me, and it's never been the same. So I don't know.
You think he hates, is the feeling mutual? Do you think you hit him back?
No, I don't hate him.
Just ask.
No, hey, you got me to say something earlier this session that, fool me once, right?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I personally think the governor's a very gregarious, likable guy when you're around him. I don't like the way he's operated in this building. I don't think he has treated me or the Senate fairly or equally. I think part of it too, just back to the previous question, is we've had to sue each other 3 times. In the first 2 lawsuits, they're known colloquially as Treat v. Stitt or Stitt v. Treat. But the important part that I think he sometimes lost on him is me and McCall were co-equal partners in that lawsuit against him. It was actually Stitt v. Treat and McCall, but the shorthand of the Supreme Court is Treat v. Stitt. And he's been really fixated on that too. But no, I think that Kevin Stitt is a good family man. I think he's a strong Christian. I think he's very likable. I used to enjoy being around him, but he's cut off all communication.
That's what I was going to ask, is have you had any meetings since, I mean, last I checked it was July or August maybe?
No, we've had a meeting. We had a meeting when Mason was still in the hospital when he was trying to call us into special session, and I asked him to move it to a Thursday because of some of Mason's medical stuff. And so we came up here whenever that was, January, right before that special session. I said, Governor, we're not going to pass your tax cut that you want, and so I think you're wasting your time calling us in. That was the last real conversation we've had. We've, State of the State obviously shook his hand and said, good job, Governor, and shook his hand and told him thanks for signing the groceries sales tax elimination of the state portion. And then last week I was speaking to a group, and he came in as I was leaving, and we shook hands, and it was kind of like a Newman Seinfeld thing. I said, Governor, and he said, Pro Tem, and we went on about our ways.
So, if I could just ask about this folder that's sitting here. I mean, that's the relationship between the governor and the Senate drives a lot of the decision that the Senate has to, confirm or reject nominations. We're hearing a lot of rumors. The lobbyists think that you guys are going to axe most of the secretaries and people that are up. Where do things stand? When is that going to start? May, I guess, and then how does the dynamic between you and the governor affect this?
Lobbyists love to try to assume they know what's going on. And they love to create rumors, so I have to come dispel rumors and smoke out what the truth is. Exec noms, we have a May 1st deadline for the governor to submit those exec noms for our consideration. Chris Burrell, who does his appointments, has been doing appointments for a long, long time. Does a professional job on it. A lot of times we get a flood of those right toward the end of that deadline. And so rather than the herky-jerky get started not, we have exec noms slated to start after that May 1st time. Will we confirm them all? I'm not guaranteeing that. Will the governor do something boneheaded and try to veto all things just based on personality? If he does, we have hold of these exec noms. We want to treat these people with respect and fairness, and we don't like what had to happen last year, although we had every right to do it, to get his attention, to make sure that victims of domestic violence and the others that he vetoed last year weren't just done because of pettiness.
But do you have are you returning to a system this year where if the senator whose district...
Yes.
So if a senator who would be carrying, if they choose not to, you're not going to carry it instead?
Correct. And as you serving something for a while, I made this decision before, Carrie Hicks made an announcement. She rejected 2 of them, like a librarian one and one to the State Department of Education. I made this decision back in the interim that I had made a mistake early on my first year. The governor had nominated Jennifer Monies and Estella Hernandez, if I remember right, to the State Board of Education, and he'd also nominated Eric Stevenson. So I was set there to OU's Board of Regents, and he was out of state. And so I was left with the decision, how do we handle out of state? Because we hadn't really faced that in at least my tenure. And I thought, well, it's most appropriate for the pro tem to take an out of state one and make a decision, or the chair of that committee. And then when he was saying, hey, they're refusing to carry some people to the state board, we really need them, I was trying to be helpful, thought I was being helpful to the governor. Those people I personally like, Jennifer Monies and Estella Hernandez, I've had a long time relationship with, friendship. And so I made a decision at that point, well, if I'm pro tem, I can pull them up and do it myself. And I've long since regretted doing that, not because of those 2 people. I still hold them in high regard, and all 3 of those. Don't mean to leave Eric out of it, all 3 of them. But it was a long standing of the Senate that if that member didn't want to carry him, that it didn't go anywhere, and I had decided during the interim that I was going to revert back to that.
Are you going to, do you think it's likely the Senate will approve Zumwalt now that she's under some?
I don't know, that comes into question. I can't make any firm commitments either way. We want to make sure she's treated fairly, but we also want to make sure we take the exec non process very seriously.
Pro Tem, we gotta get you going.
Okay.